The method used by Satan is very simple, very effective, and it's made of 3 steps. The first step is the presentation of a sophism. A sophism is a fancy word for the presentation of an argument that is explicitly designed to deceive someone. Satan presents this argument, and now it's up to the victim to develop what's known as a syllogism. A syllogism is the second part of the process that's carried out by the victim, and it is defined as a deduction. A syllogism is nothing more than you're faced with new information, and you try to make sense of that information by comparing it to what you already know, or comparing it to what's already out there that you can find as evidence that can either prove or disprove the new information that you're faced with. Satan doesn't have to do any work at this point because his argument at first glance looks so convincing that most people think it might be true. It kind of makes sense. And humans then try to fill in the gaps of the new information that they receive, especially if it comes from a reputable source. And by filling in the gaps of the sophism, humans then create what's known as a fallacy. A fallacy is nothing more than a conclusion of a deduction that was carried out with bad information. You don't have to be a bad person. You don't have to be evil. You don't have to be completely on this. You don't have to be a Luciferian. You don't have to be on the side of Satan to carry out a bad syllogism and to reach a fallacy. Because if the information you're using to make your deductions is not true, no matter how good of a person you are, you'll always arrive at a wrong destination. What happens then is that most people have not filtered the information they were presented with a trustworthy reference, and then they arrive at a fallacy that they believe is the truth. Once they believe their conclusion, their deduction is the truth, they present it to other people as good and valid. What they don't know is that from the beginning, the information that they were using to arrive at a conclusion was wrong. Once that happens, we arrive at what's kind of funny, but at the same time is really sad, is that most people think they're right. And they believe that their conclusion, their fallacy, is the truth. And now it's kind of popular to hear expressions such as my truth and your truth. They're nothing more than your fallacy and my fallacy. And a fallacy is simply a wrong deduction, not because you're dumb, not because you're evil, but because you were using bad information to begin with. As a result, what we see in this world is that people stray further and further away from the truth, or farther and farther away from the truth. Please correct my English, but something like that. And every cycle that this process is repeated with, or every cycle of this process, the person develops a new fallacy, and the new person develops a new fallacy, and the new person that listens to it develops a new fallacy, and every cycle we go further and further away from the truth. As a result, the truth then becomes a lie, and the fallacy becomes the new truth. How do we find an example of something like this? In the Bible, you have Adam and Eve, and in the Bible, you also have Jesus being tempted by the devil. When Jesus was presented with the temptations, he filtered every argument presented by Satan. He filtered it with, no, God said this, so I'm going to go with what God said. Now compare that with Adam and Eve. When presented with the argument by Satan, at first they were like, well, but God said this. But then they looked at the snake and they saw that the snake didn't die, and that the fruit of the tree was good looking, and the snake didn't die. And the snake is a living thing, I'm a living thing. And so if 1 plus 1 is 2, then me eating the thing will not kill me because it didn't kill the snake. So I'm going to eat the fruit. That was a syllogism that led to a fallacy of, I won't die if I eat this. And as a result, then, if you're Christian, you believe that that was the beginning of sin on earth. Here's the thing. Regardless of what you believe in, this process is applicable to everything in life. Here's what I mean. You can be a politician, you can be a teacher, you can be a musician, you can be an actor, you can be a plumber. All of us are processing information. The information that we process, if it's not filtered with evidence, a good reference, and good, let's say, guides, then we're basically arriving at fallacies all over the place. And person A has fallacy A, and that person with the fallacy A starts arguing with person with fallacy B. And they're both wrong, but they both think they're right. Because their source of information, they believe is good and valid, and this other person thinks their source of information is good and valid. But what they don't check is, where the heck did both their sources of information come from? Because the very first thing that we find in humans nowadays is that if you go to school and you ask questions, you're a bad student. Good students are those that don't question the source. If it's in the textbook, it's true. If it comes from my teacher, it's true. If you ask too many questions, you're kicked out of the classroom. I know, because I've been kicked out of classrooms because I was interrupting the class because I was asking too many questions. But what the teacher was saying made no sense. So we are raised in such a way that we cannot question anything, because questioning is synonymous with you're rebellious, you are disruptive, you are evil almost. When you're a little kid and you're like 2-3 years old and you're first learning how to speak, you notice that most of us, when we were young, all we asked was, Daddy, why this? Mom, why this? Why this? Why that? Why is it like that? What is that? What is this? The moment we get to school, you can't ask questions. Teacher, why is it like that? Oh, that. But then if you ask a second time, no, we have a curriculum and we have a lot of material we need to get through. We don't have time to just answer all of your questions. And then if you try to find the teacher after class, the teacher's usually busy grading or writing a research paper, etc. So you're just left to fend for yourself. And to be honest, no one is rewarded for asking questions, because you will not pass the class for asking the right questions. You will pass the class and you will get a good grade and you will get a medal, you will get a diploma by repeating the information that was given to you. You cannot ask whether or not that information was correct. You can only ask, how can I repeat this information as accurately as possible to get the grade, the job, the promotion I want? And so then we arrive at a world where we're constantly faced with new information. We can't ask the validity of that information. We simply process that information, arrive at a conclusion that must be accepted by the majority, and then we promote that new information, that new thing, to everyone else as something that's good and valid. Because if so many people believe it, then there's no way that it can be wrong. Are you smarter than everybody else? How dare you think that you are gifted in such a way that you can see more clearly than everybody else? I'm not saying I'm smarter than everybody else. All I'm saying is this. Satan has been getting the best of us with a very simple and effective method. That method is comprised of the presentation of a sophism, that is an argument designed to deceive. That's false information. Then it's processing our minds through a process called a syllogism, which is just a deduction. That deduction leads us to a conclusion, which, if we don't have the right reference, the right evidence, and we don't ask the right questions, is a fallacy. And a fallacy is nothing more than a conclusion arrived at with wrong information. All of us have to be careful where we're getting our information and how we're processing that information. Otherwise, regardless of whether we're good or bad, we'll be promoting information and beliefs that take us further away from the truth and the happiness we actually want to experience in our lives. Because no one is actually saying, oh, I want to believe bad things so that my life can be miserable. No, I want to believe good things so that I can live a better life. Remember, sophism, syllogism, and fallacy. Hopefully, when you do your syllogism, you have a good enough filter and a good enough set of questions to realize that a lot of what you're presented with are sophisms, arguments designed to deceive you.